Alrighty, let's go. Yeah, good. Good, 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 good. Testing. Huge welcome to the startup community stage. In a second, you will again have lovely sound through your headset. And I would just like to welcome you to this stage and allow people to find a seat because we will start talking about the power of diversity. And in just a few seconds, there will be two wonderful researchers from the Foundation for Entrepreneurship sharing some of their research and knowledge. So, small countdown to starting the show. Is that good? We're all good? Excellent. That means that you will now have the sound from somewhere else. Who am I? Just to welcome you here today. My name is Pernille Berg. I will be, and now I'm supposed to put these on as well. It's very excellent. Sorry. So, what we will be doing in the next best part of an hour is we will take you through an interesting journey of not only sharing latest research knowledge about diversity, also a debate with three wonderful representatives from educational institutions, and then we will have an award presenting Excellence Diversity Award we'll finish the hour with. My name is Pernille Berg, as I mentioned. I am Research and Programs Director at the Foundation for Entrepreneurship, and I am delighted to see you all. And we will just go through, this is the program, as I just briefly mentioned. And you can see it behind me, and I can also. So, when it comes to some of what we will focus on today, is we will frame it looking at education. We know today that we have a disparity. Why are we focusing on gender? We know diversity encompasses so much more than gender. We're fully aware of that. Having said that, we also know to this day that there is still a difference when we look at gender representation when it comes to startups and when it comes to investment in terms of investor capital. So why is that? And with me, what I am delighted to welcome you to is Head of Research Kåre Moberg and Nana Katrine Gram Lange, analyst and soon to be PhD student. So a huge welcome to you, and I will now present you with the clicker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So happy to be here. So happy that you want to be with us a rainy day in November here in Copenhagen. We have about 15 minutes, so we want to squeeze in as much as possible in this time space. So what we are going to talk about is our research on female entrepreneurship. That will take about 4 minutes. Then we are going to introduce you to a concept that we are going to use going forward in our research on female entrepreneurship, which is the concept of affordances, which will be my colleague Nana that will present this. And then we are going to have a short reflection exercise because as researchers we're always looking for new and interesting data. So we are going to try to extract some data from you, and we hope we have time for that as well. But the Danish Foundation for Entrepreneurship have had a long focus on diversity and a strategic focus on female entrepreneurship. And we have published many different type of publications on research about this. This one is 6 policy recommendations for how to get more female entrepreneurs. But since our core mandate and activity is within the educational system, we also have publications focusing directly on this at all the levels of education from ABC to PhD. And as you can see, there are some overlap between the bullet points, what you focus on when it's female entrepreneurship in general for the industry, as well as within the education system. But there are also differences, because as an organization focusing mainly on education, which is our mandate, it wouldn't really make sense that we establish a lot of new networks or that we focus a lot on getting access to finance and so on. We will have more impact if we focus on the education and what we can do within this system. And this is very challenging, but it's also very promising. Educational systems are typically the same for everyone. It shouldn't be specific for a particular group. So targeting a specific group, which would be females in this case, female entrepreneurs, is a bit challenging. So we have to work with things that are practically applicable and can be used in a broad sense in the education system. And luckily, we have many prior studies that have demonstrated that just general entrepreneurship education typically benefit females more than males. So just going for this is something that is really promising, which is good for an organization like us that focus on this as our core activity. But this is especially the case for sustainable entrepreneurship. And why is this the case, actually, for females? Well, one thing is that they use a different type of language when it comes to sustainable entrepreneurship. Rather than the techie, Silicon Valley, militaristic, a bit toxic masculinity jargon of establishing beachheads, crushing the competition, and so on, you use a different type of language where you talk about taking care of, collaboration, and so on. And this is an example of an affordance that is different for males and females. So what other type of affordances can we identify, and how can we work with these within the educational system is something we are going to focus a lot on going forward. And this is something my colleague Nana will address. So.
Yeah, so the concept of affordances is a theoretical concept used in design and environmental psychology originally, but we use it to describe how individuals perceive their room to make choices and take action. So this image is the design interpretation. When you encounter a tube, how do you interact with it? Like, do you jump into it or do you stand on top of it? But we use it a bit more as a metaphor, so to how you interact with the settings you're in. As we all know, the choices individuals make are shaped by many factors. So it's things like individual characteristics and background. It's also the micro context you're in, so like your family, the school, and the entire, like your journey through the educational system, also your friends. And then the macro context, which is the broader society and all the structural, cultural things you encounter. And the affordances, well, it's what the surroundings offer to the individual. And the individual always interact with them based on what they can afford to do. So some things make more sense to do when you encounter those settings based on your context and characteristics than other things do. And then when we address affordances from a gender perspective, I think many of you probably recognize that when women into entrepreneurship, they might encounter some affordances that aren't really that like an obvious choice to interact with. It's a setting which can offer large amounts of resistance to women. And I think we all know those examples of women trying to apply for a bank loan and then they get told to bring their husband. But we actually found that those, like the selection of entrepreneurship might begin even earlier. So we conducted a study last year at our entrepreneurship festival, where we have a lot of children and young people attending. And when they asked the Danish 6th and 7th graders, the girls and boys showed equal intentions of becoming entrepreneurs as adults. So they all said that could be interesting, like to an equal degree. But when we addressed the older, well, young people, I guess they're not kids anymore when they reach the youth education. So that's like 16 years plus. Then a gap emerged between the boys and the girls, or the young men and women. So suddenly the boys were more interested in entrepreneurship than the girls were. So something apparently happens at this stage, and what we're trying to do is find out what it is and how to address it. And by setting in within the educational system, we can sort of try to shed some new light on the settings the young people or children encounter in the future. So by providing them those tools to sort of address the affordances they encounter, maybe they'll be able to see different ways of interacting with them. So that's what that's what should happen during the education. So when you encounter those macro contexts with all those obstacles, if you learn and bring with you some like knowledge or tools from your micro context, then you might be able to take different actions than you would have otherwise. So to change it, we first need to know why. Why does this gap emerge between young women and young men? And then we need to start making changes where we can. And by intervening within the educational system, we can create this micro context which support girls in entrepreneurship. And it's not because girls need to learn more about how to be entrepreneurs at an early age, at least not necessarily. So it's not that they need to learn a lot about finance or business founding from fourth grade or something, but it's more like we need to make sure that entrepreneurship is not systematically written off because it occurs as something that cannot be afforded for the girls.
So we would like to end our session with a short reflection where we try to establish this concept with you and the thoughts that we have presented today, but also as a way to extract some data from you. So what we would like you to do now is to think back when you were the age of 12, the age of 15. And how did you experience the affordances from the system, in particular the school system, in regards to what you were encouraged to do? Which signals were you receiving? And were these different between boys and girls, if you as boys compare with girls and as girls compare with boys? And this is something we would like just to think about to set the scene. And then we would like to go to Mentimeter, menti.com, if you all can do that. And use the code 34 40 35 91. Because what we would like to get from you is suggestions of how could this have been changed? What could have been done in order for you to be more encouraged to become entrepreneurs at this age? What type of affordances would you like the school system to provide? So this is something we can go forward with and try to implement in the education today. Role models, it's a classic. More teamwork. That's something we have been looking into a lot because there is this issue of females not starting ventures as teams, and which companies that get funded by venture capitalists are teams. So it's something that we have been looking into a lot. Speakers from the entrepreneur world. That's also something very important, as we have seen in research before. What is very important is that these speakers from the entrepreneurial world is not replacing the educators. That's something that we have had a lot of results showing not very good results from.
But the focus on future possibilities and less pressure is actually, that addresses something we've been talking a lot about as well. And it might, maybe there's a connection to this whole well-being discussion, because the pressure might force some of the young people into choices that seem like the obvious choice instead of something that might be interesting but less obvious.
Internship opportunities. We have some researchers from CBS in the audience, and I know that the result they had was when females worked for female entrepreneurs, they were much more likely to start up companies afterwards. Actually, the effect was twice as big as when they had a mother that were entrepreneur. So it's something that we could look into, perhaps especially within the STEM sector, because that sector is typically extra male-dominated. Do you have other takeaways, Nana?
Well, I think it's always a good idea to do some workshops, and we're actually planning on trying out different interventions. So I think we're very open to a lot of input, and I think we can definitely use what you wrote here. And we're trying to figure out what works best, and we need many different takes on it.
All right, and with that, we would say thank you for your attention, We are sorry we couldn't present too much concrete research, but there is a lot of interesting things that we are going to do going forward. And you are very much welcome to assist us on this journey. So if you would like to contact us about what research we have or suggestion of how you could help us with this, much welcome to contact us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Don't run off. So that was a tour de force of research that you've actually conducted over the past few years. One of the things when I was standing downstairs looking at reflecting back, and none of you wrote it, so now I'm going to share with you what I was thinking. When we're around that age, a lot of adults start asking us what we want to be. You're all nodding. And I can't remember who said it, but someone said it. Rather than asking young people what they want to be, we could ask them what would they like to do in life. So instead of putting a category of being in terms of a profession, saying what would you like to do in terms of which change do you want to see yourself in. Is that something you have embarked on in the research you've done? And this is unscripted, so they are thinking I'm a nasty right now.
Well, there are some interesting research within the sector of STEM where they talk about doing research or being a researcher. And it pops up stereotypical images when you think about what you want to be. So I want to be a videnskapsman
Exactly.
in Danish, or a researcher. And you think about males in white robes and so on. So if you rather focus on the doing, there are some interesting things to be had when it comes to this stereotype threat issues in male-dominated sectors. And I guess female-dominated sectors as well for males. It goes both ways.
And just because I think we have time for one more question, and I have one in my pocket, because when you talk about the balance between educators versus role models, what should an educator be aware of in the balance of being and doing?
Well, I guess they definitely should be aware that all the pupils and children in their classes come with different backgrounds. So I think to think about the language you use, how you address different subjects, and if you invite an entrepreneur in, then maybe try to invite a female entrepreneur as well. You can invite both a male and a female, but maybe not just the male role model. So it's how you speak, and it's how you speak with the children, it's how you address the world. It's also what you invite into, the classroom.
Cool.
Well, there is a sort of a division of labor between educators and the outside world. So, I mean, as an educator, you're not employed for your business network. Really, you're employed there to have your pedagogical knowledge and know-how. So. It's really interesting to see the effects that outside world have and these role models have on the young pupils that feel that this is very authentic, this is for real, these people are doing something very important that they want to share with me, so they really straighten up. At the same time, it's really important to have these very good educators with the pedagogical knowledge to lift everyone, because when it comes to role models, they typically inspire some, but not everyone. And this is something that can be complicated because education should be for the whole class. So it's really important to strike a balance there.
And from a historical point of view within the entrepreneurship education field, there was kind of in the beginning, we would share the war stories, bring in the ones that had achieved, that had made it. And if you look into different, I see familiar faces in the crowd as well. And just last week, lots of awards were handed out at Building Green, highlighting the ones who have made it, who've made the big achievement. Whereas what we can also see from youth, which was illustrated from other schools in Denmark, saying that we have a youth group that are asking for something else. So one of the things they're saying is, within the architectural industry, we don't want the star architects anymore because it takes a team. So I think what you are elucidating in terms of affordances, that as an educator, there is a huge potential in diversifying the role models, as you say, Nana, and then how to curate the role models that you bring in. It's going to be very exciting. I obviously look forward to hearing much more about your research, but I also hope that you are now curious to hear much more about the research that is coming, where we can actually highlight and illustrate what seems to happen, so that we are further in explaining these structural differences that we can identify today. So a huge round of applause to Ko and Nana. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I will do this, because while I will then kind of say we're now sprinting to the next part of this session, we will have a few chairs up on stage. I will move over here, and I will welcome Nilma Abbas from Zealand Business Academy, and Simone Stilling from VIA University College, and Marie-Louise Urskov from Next Women Network in University College Nordjylland, also known as USIN. And you've told me you'd actually like to sit down. And I'm standing up so I don't miss a beat. And what we're looking into, because as Ko and Nana kind of highlighted, is something seems to happen. So if we look at it from an individual basis, when these wonderful people we have around the schools, it seems as if that there is aspirations and intentions that are very equally distributed. And then we evolved. A lot of people will already have the juice. Something happens in puberty, and then there are big differences emerging. So what we do know is that diversity is more than gender. I've already said this. But what we would actually like to look at in this panel session is, what do we need to do in terms of changing the structures? And when we have a title like Changing Structures, Not Persons, it's because we don't want, nobody likes to be told that we have to change our individual behavior. And we also know, given the research at hand, that this is not an individual doing that has to change. There is something else at stake. So one of the things that we will kind of dive into in this session, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
I forgot to say that. Where are my manners? Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here.
And
And
thank
you
you for
have-
inviting us.
Well, we're delighted you're with us.
Thank you.
And you have very different perspectives that you're bringing to this panel. Nilma, you have worked and you've designed quite some interesting courses and curriculum within IT. Simone, you have created and established a network, innovation network, focusing on the female students.
Exactly, yes.
And Marie-Louise, you have been part of an incubator and have established your own company at
Yeah.
USIN.
Yeah.
And as, because I'm able to say it and you're listening to me, I can also say that all of these initiatives have received funding from the Foundation for Entrepreneurship as our way of supporting the structural changes that we experience, that the educational institutions would really like to pursue and ensure take place. So with all of what I've said thus far, my first question to you is, why is it important that we have the context of diversity, or we discuss diversity in the context of innovation and entrepreneurship? Do you want to go first?
Yes, definitely. So one of the key points in why it's so important with diversity is because it brings other perspectives to the table. So you get also more diverse entrepreneurial startups and businesses that can thrive and have these diverse points of view, right? So if you have someone with a disability, they will have a different point of view than someone without in order to help forward that problem or help solve a problem that many people who without disabilities won't know about. And it also applies to ethnicity and religion as well as gender.
Yeah. Because each minority, and apparently women are in a minority still in the entrepreneurial field, each minority, they face some barriers, and all those barriers are different, but if we help them overcome them, then we can thrive more actually, and that's why we need to have more focus on diversity.
I totally agree with both of them about everything they just said, and I would like to add that diversity in just not just in entrepreneurship, in our society in general, it helps us flourish. It helps us accept each other in a better way because we are different. We have different backgrounds, we have different educations. If we can't cooperate with each other, what society we are living in? This is why we created the Girls in IT. Actually, I created the Girls in IT with my colleague Vibeke, so that we can accept the minority in our society and show them the light, show them that you're not alone. Everybody's for you here. And the network that we create for them helps them to see that they are not just a minority. There's others like you. You just need to be accepted.
Yeah, and you are capable of having success with your projects, even though that you are a minority and are facing barriers or having disabilities, which is just actually an udfordring, how you say that?
A challenge.
It's just a challenge, actually, that you have to face, but you are still capable of a lot of things.
Minority doesn't mean that they are not successful. Minority means that they don't feel that they belong. It doesn't mean that they are not successful. We have amazing women in our Girls in IT, where we won a huge amount of hackathons. Among those hackathons we participated in, there were actually some hackathons where we participated against professionals with having 10 years of experience with developing these products, and our girls won the first prime. And this shows that it doesn't mean that they are not successful. It means that they can, but they have a doubt, or they are challenged about being accepted in the society.
And I think it's the professor at Copenhagen University, Birgitte Possing, who's actually shown that, for example, cars, that there are more accidents and we sustain more severe injuries if we're involved in car accidents because the car is not designed as in terms of universal design criteria. We also have it from pharmaceutical, medical products. We know that there is a difference in how we respond to medicine. So diversity may not only there is a normative perspective in what you're saying. I could also say from a quality perspective in terms of pure simple product quality that it might hence. You have focused on the societal value of it. And one could also say from a cynical perspective that it's a good business venture to develop, as a female founder, to develop a business that caters to some of the challenges that women face, or what would you say?
Well, it doesn't mean that women should have the opportunity, but they can participate in creating something together with others, because, as I said, diversity in producing something is very important. Let's assume that they want to develop something about the cars. If women are involved in designing these cars, then they have a point of view about how we want it to be, right? This is one. The other thing is that women think in a different way than men. There's not a concrete studies about this, but there's a huge amount of observational articles about this that says that women cannot start a project without understanding it fully and what the outcome is going to come out, while men, they will jump into trying to find a solution. This trying how to communicate with others, how to what do we call it, especially the aspect of communication, where women have the tendency of communicating through communication through networking and relationships, while men they have the tendency to create communications just because of the concurrence.
And we just dive into that in terms of networking, because you've designed a network with that particular focus on trying to ensure, to use Ko and Nana's lingo, to use affordances or support.
Exactly. And that is both for female students who are curious about entrepreneurship or just curious about becoming a leader one day or having a project, but also for females who are already established some kind of project. And what we do is that we get them all together so they can actually be together with people they can see themselves in, and then you create this environment with role models and women looking up to other women, and having this environment where women are helping women instead of being in competition with each other, actually. So yeah.
Because it kind of, one of the things that you are all representatives of higher education.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at this diversity aspect, as a higher education, how do you actually initiate the debate, the agenda of diversity from a gender perspective, knowing that diversity is so much more, but there is a difference between gender when we look at educational preferences, and particular within innovation and startup. So how do you as an educational institution actually initiate this discussion?
I can start if you want. When Vibeke and I started this Girls in IT, we started it as a boot camp to show the girls that if you have the interest in studying IT, then we have the tools to do that. It's the same concept we do with men, because whenever a student has an interest in something, then we as teachers, we can educate you, right? It's like just this idea that you have the interest, we have the tools. Right? It's like a concept that can be applied anywhere.
So the methodology is the same.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, and then Kåre Moberg from this Fund for Entrepreneurship, we are actually also leaning a lot on his research as well, where he found out what is working and what is not working, and some of the things that are actually working and encouraging women into the entrepreneurial field is actually being a part of a network and being exposed to role models and having this and being motivated by sustainable projects, actually. So yeah, so thank you for your research.
you're welcome. Thank you to Kåre, because one of the findings that was also in that particular, when we're addressing sustainability agenda, what we find in that research is that students can be driven by, colloquially said, saving the planet, and not necessarily saving the planet and starting a business. So how to engage and set the agenda of gender. You're interested in saving the planet. You have a gender aspect, and now also motivating them to go through an ideation process.
Exactly.
We also see like a lot of female startups have an interest in the sustainable development goals, and I think that we do at UCN to gain more women in our entrepreneurial programs is actually, I think they just advocate a lot for the women. And we also have 2 female leaders at the UCN Innovation House where that I'm the representative of, and a very strong female, as you have, female role models, but also networks where we really lift each other up and support each other. So actually, as the only place in Denmark, UCN actually has more female entrepreneurs starting our programs than we have male entrepreneurs, typically.
Actually, at Zealand, we the one who stands for this course, or this what we call it for the entrepreneurship and creating courses so that they can help them create their own companies and create their own workshop is my colleague Vibeke, and she's actually helping me with Girls in IT, and the reason that she stands for it at Zealand Roskilde is because we want to capture the interest of more of our females into it. But so far, we haven't succeeded with that. They don't have any interest in it. Really,
Do you have an idea of why?
Well, I asked. I just asked actually 2 of my ladies here, Camille and Britt. I just asked them, why don't you want to create your own? Well, we know that we are developers. Why do we need to create our own? They don't even have the interest in it. So you can't force someone if doesn't have the interest.
No.
We also, in our network, especially for the female students who haven't jumped into something yet, some of the barriers or fears that they have is the financial part. That they fear that they will not survive financially, and that's why then we have a lot of workshop in like getting the right funding and getting crowdsourcing, and also just economy as well, and having those role models as well, and showing how do they do it. And a part of the members, they when they finish their educations, because we've been doing this for 4 years now, so a lot of women have already finished. What we see is that some of them, they jump straight into it and they struggle for a whole year, but then they finally get the funding, and then some of them, they just go in and get this full-time job that is based on their education, and then when they feel they're ready and they have this financial stability, then they feel they're ready to jump into it.
But that's also why these incubation, like, what is it called, environments are so important, because they give a safe space for people of all genders and with diversity, a place to like sort of explore whether or not their idea is actually good, but also the women's fear in not having funding is also valid, because the numbers also say that female founders and female startups, they get way less funding than the male-driven startups. So that's why this talk about bias and diversity is so important.
Yeah, not only do we have fewer women that will start their own business, but once they start their own business, a very low percentage of those will receive the funding capital.
Yeah.
So the financial literacy and how to embark on that kind of journey is also extremely important.
Yeah,
Very.
actually, I read an article by Tenenbaum et al. In 2005. He mentioned why there are less entrepreneur women in our society. And actually, he says that it's because the way they analyze the risks, and the risks are very much high on them rather than the men that will take the risk. So there's a huge difference between how men take into risking everything and start, and how women do it. So this could be one of the reasons why they don't want to do it, because as the lady says, it's about financials.
And again, going back to core, it may also be how we use the language in terms of what is a risk. So one of the things, going back to the title, change the structures and not the individual, when we're talking about diversity and changing the tone in terms of embracing the need to redress the gender inequality. What we can also see in terms of well-being and thriving is that we have a youth population not thriving at the moment. So I looked into some of the stats for today, and on a global scale, this is actually 50% of our youth population today globally is not thriving. So when we look at that, given that we're looking at the structures, the educational role, and embracing, motivating the entrepreneurial mindset, if you like, how can we then tune into the diversity, well-being, and then the education plus entrepreneurship? It's a lot of agendas that you have to cater to.
Yeah.
Can I start there? So I used to work in travel, where I was a flight attendant, and you didn't just call in sick when you were a flight attendant. You could also call in unfit for flight, which means that if you've been up all night fighting with your boyfriend, your mom is sick and at the hospital or anything like that, you could call in unfit for flight because you were not able to caretake the objectives of doing a flight and taking care of your guests and security and all that. So I think, and I think that's a very valid way of calling in sick. That is to say that if you're just mentally or physically unable to get into work and do the work that you're supposed to do, and you're just not mentally there, it gets difficult to also maintain the social responsibilities of your work, right? Because your workplace environment can worsen because of the dynamics and such.
And if I'm to be very bold, because We are in a panel on a debate.
Yeah.
A lecturer will say, I see that every day when students don't come to class. So you're unfit to study, and you have the option of literally just staying at home and do your studying from home. But if we're looking into the education, because I think it's a very interesting point,
Yeah.
so it's not
Yeah.
so, but I'm just being smart.
Coy.
Yeah.
Exactly. But if we look at it from a structural point of view and trying to respect what I think is a very salient point on your part, in respecting each individual and at the same time ensuring a structure that can support diversity. How that balance, I spoke to you earlier, I find it very, very difficult how to ensure that balance. I don't know if you have any reflections on it.
We have some.
Yeah?
And also in the network, we have these different teachings, and some of the teachings or some of the focus is that this is for women. Women have a cycle. They have times a month that they feel really great with a lot of energy, very outgoing, and then they have time for months where they are more introverted and reflective because of their period, and that is also something you have to put into the equation as well. Yeah.
So, as an educational institution, we want to ensure the affordances, to stay in the lingo of Koa and Nana, embracing diversity, and at the same time making sure that we will get the best students, because we want to make sure that we give students the best that we can.
I think
How
it's
how
also
can we
about-
how can we create a frame?
I think it's also about providing the framework where there is flexibility for your students or for your employees to make these decisions for themselves, because no one wants to call in unfit for flight like 5 days in a row. They want to work, and people want to study, and they want to be there and show up. So I think it's about creating these frameworks where there is a room for flexibility and there is room for dialogue about how you're feeling and how we're going to get you through these things that you're feeling and coping with.
And have you experienced that as a student, asking at the
Yes,
school?
yes, definitely, because I have arthritis, so some days my body just hurts so much I can barely get out of bed, and I have very understanding educators, and I can just tell them like, this is just not a good day for me to show up. My body is hurting. Can I do something from home? And I've always been met with quite a lot of understanding. But also my educators are also very holistic people, I would say. So I think getting those framework, thinking of people and being as whole complex individuals with room for pain and for joy and all that. I think, I've experienced that quite a bit actually. It's
Can
about
I give
honesty
my
also.
perspective on this?
Yes,
As
please.
an educator.
Yes, please.
Because we have a frame, a specific frame every semester on how and what and when we have to educate what section of this and what part of that. So we can't change it or move
We can't
it.
change it completely.
No. But actually, I might say something that everybody would get angry at. We got something good out of Corona. So Corona wasn't that bad because we turned into digitalizing our society, and this helps actually during the education. When I receive several from my students, like most half of the class that they are sick, then do you want to go online? Do you prefer to go? Yeah, if it's online, then I don't need to exhaust my body. I can just focus on the study. Then I run online. I myself, I'm not a healthy person. Sometimes I collapse, so I talk to my boss. I want to switch my education to online. My students love that. They just want to go online because it match. They can do whatever while they are listening to the education.
So flexibility in terms of ensuring not compromising
No.
with the learning outcomes or
You can't change the
progress.
schedule,
Okay.
but you can use the tools that you have.
And we're coming down to the final minute. So Simone, you get the first choice in saying in
Yeah.
terms of we're not going to look into the future going down 10 years, but if you wanted to change one thing at VIA that would be implemented next year in order to support diversity as a structural change, what would that be?
Oh, that would definitely be more focus in the education that you can, through your education and through your education in VIA, make your own path and create your own project and put all the things that you find meaning in into your path, because that also gives you well-being, yes,
Thank you.
and meaning.
And you?
I would argue that you don't need to run a successful startup to be an entrepreneur.
What should UCN change next year to make it the best educational institution? Embracing
Well,
diversity.
Yeah, embracing diversity. I would say. Oh, can we come back to me, because I think this is
Ilma?
a hard question.
Yeah, I can very easily say that we have Girls in IT Community Club running only on Roskilde campus. I would love to see it everywhere.
Very, very, very good.
And I will also just say we already have all this education and community clubs, but even more would be better.
Yes.
I want to see more diversity in our educators as well.
That's a very, very, very good recommendation, and we can implement that next year.
Yeah.
Consider it done.
And more role models.
Okay, now it's getting
fun, right?
So this is why we have a networking session, because now you'll start saying, "Oh, I would also like, and I would also like." Listen, I think you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much for participating on stage with me.
Thank you for having
Please, a huge round of applause to Nilma, Simone, and Marie-Louise. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.